If you like my videos, please subscribe and give me a like. Have a nice day. My name is Olivia, and I'm 31 years old. Growing up, my sister Madison and I were closer than shadows. We didn't just share possessions. We shared our deepest confidences and wildest aspirations. When she became engaged, my heart swelled with happiness, and I immediately pledged $50,000 from my savings to help make her perfect wedding a reality. Then, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon, an email arrived that irrevocably fractured our connection. "Don't come to my wedding. Just watch the live stream, LOL," my sister's message read. I sat frozen, rereading those words for what felt like hours before making a choice that would alter everything between us. Before I delve deeper into this story, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. Please hit the like button and consider subscribing to become part of our circle of people sharing their true life experiences. Madison and I didn't just share a bedroom in our childhood home. We shared every aspect of our lives. We were only 2 years apart, and those initial years forged what I believed would be an indestructible bond. Our room contained 2 single beds positioned against opposing walls, but more often than not, one of us would creep into the other's bed. There, we'd whisper tales and stifle laughter until our mother's gentle shush echoed from the hallway. When Madison was 7 and I was 9, I dedicated an entire summer to teaching her how to ride a bicycle. She was terrified of falling, but I promised I wouldn't let go until she felt completely ready. The day she finally pedaled away under her own power, the sheer triumph shining in her eyes meant the world to me. That summer, we also devised our own secret language, a blend of invented words and hand signals that utterly bewildered our parents and provided endless amusement for us. Even into our adult years, we'd occasionally send each other messages in that peculiar code when we needed to convey something privately. Middle school presented its own set of difficulties. Madison faced torment from a clique of cruel girls who singled her out because of her braces and a slightly awkward phase she was navigating. I was already in high school by then, but I frequently waited by her locker to walk her home, creating a buffer between her and her tormentors. On one occasion, I confronted the ringleader, a girl named Rachel. While I never issued threats, my impassioned big sister defense was sufficient to make them retreat. Our teenage years only deepened our bond. When Madison wanted to attend prom with her first serious boyfriend, Tyler, but couldn't afford the gown she'd been dreaming of, I took on extra shifts at the ice cream parlor where I worked. The night before the prom, I presented her with the shimmering blue dress she'd admired at the mall months earlier. She wept, and so did I that same year. Our parents went through a challenging period and separated for 3 months. During that time, Madison and I created our own sense of stability. We instituted a weekly Friday movie night tradition, complete with homemade popcorn and bulk buy candy to save money. We'd alternate choosing the film. Though our tastes differed, she favored romantic comedies while I preferred mysteries. We never voiced complaints about the other's selection. That ritual persisted long after our parents reconciled. Becoming our cherished custom. College led to a geographical separation. I remained in state, whereas Madison earned a scholarship to a university 3 states away. Yet, the distance did little to diminish our connection. We scheduled weekly FaceTime calls every Sunday evening, updating each other on coursework, roommates, and romantic developments. When Madison graduated burdened by $20,000 in student loan debt, I had just secured a promotion at my first job after college. I set up a monthly transfer to help her accelerate her debt repayment, telling her it was an investment in her future. When our grandmother passed away during Madison's final year of college, we leaned on each other in ways we never had before. Grandma Patricia had been our confidant and most ardent supporter. We drove together to the funeral, sharing the 8-hour journey, sometimes weeping, sometimes sharing treasured memories of Grandma's legendary chocolate chip cookies and unexpected life wisdom. The year following graduation proved difficult for Madison. Her college boyfriend, Derek, whom she had expected to propose, abruptly ended their 3-year relationship. Madison sank into a depression that caused me significant concern. I took a week off work to fly to her city, where I helped her tidy her apartment, encouraged her to go outside for daily walks, and listened for hours as she processed her heartbreak. By the time I left, she was smiling again, not completely healed, but clearly on the path to recovery. That's why I was so genuinely happy when, 2 years later, Madison met William at a charity event where she was volunteering. When she phoned me that night, her voice carried a buoyancy I hadn't heard in years. She described him as thoughtful, yet ambitious, and I was immediately eager to meet this man who had restored the sparkle to my sister's voice. My initial impression of William when I met him 3 weeks later was positive, though accompanied by a hint of reservation. He was undeniably charming and seemed genuinely interested in Madison, asking follow-up questions when she spoke and gazing at her with evident affection. However, there was something else present, a meticulous attention to social standing, that I noticed in subtle ways. He would casually mention the prestigious schools he had attended and carefully inspect wine labels before ordering. Madison appeared oblivious to these details, or perhaps they simply held no importance for her. I decided my slight hesitations were merely protective big sister instincts and dismissed them. William clearly came from wealth. This was apparent in his tailored clothing and the casual manner in which he spoke about his family's vacation property in Nantucket. But Madison never seemed bothered by the disparity in their backgrounds. He loves me for exactly who I am, she assured me during one of our conversations. After 8 months of dating, William proposed during our family Christmas gathering. Madison, tears streaming down her face, immediately asked me to be her maid of honor. I accepted without a moment's hesitation, already calculating mentally how much I could contribute to ensure my sister had the wedding she deserved. The initial wedding planning sessions were everything I had envisioned. Madison and I spent hours on Pinterest, curating shared boards covering everything from floral arrangements to bridesmaid attire. When she fell in love with a venue that exceeded her budget slightly, I didn't pause. I've been putting money aside for something special, I told her. Let me assist. I have $50,000 earmarked. It's yours for the wedding. Her eyes widened. Liv, that's far too much, she protested, but I could see the flicker of hope in her expression. What else would I use it for? You're my sister. This is what truly matters, I insisted. Looking back, I can pinpoint the precise moment when things began to shift. It was the first dinner with William's parents, Edward and Catherine Bradley. The Bradleys owned a luxury hotel chain and moved in influential social circles that included politicians and celebrities. Their home resembled something from a glossy magazine, all gleaming surfaces and priceless art. During that inaugural dinner, Catherine inquired about Madison's people with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. While Edward spent most of the evening engaged in calls he deemed critical international business. After that dinner, Madison seemed subtly different. A little distant, checking her phone more frequently, laughing a touch too boisterously at William's jokes. At the time, I attributed it to anxiety about impressing her future in-laws. I had no inkling that it was the start of losing my sister. The first undeniable indication that something was changing arrived 3 weeks after meeting the Bradleys. Madison created a new wedding planning group chat that included William's sister, Jennifer, his mother Catherine, and the wedding planner they had engaged, but conspicuously omitted me. I discovered this by chance when Madison's phone illuminated during our lunch, displaying messages from a group labeled Dream Wedding Team. When I questioned her about it, Madison dismissed it casually. Oh, that's just for logistical details. With William's family, you wouldn't be interested in those tedious aspects. The original venue, a charming converted barn where our parents had renewed their vows for their 25th anniversary, was suddenly deemed too provincial. Instead, Madison had booked the Bradleys' preferred location, an exclusive resort that required membership or special connections just to arrange a tour. But the barn holds such significance for our family, I said during one of our increasingly infrequent phone calls. This is about creating new memories, Liv, Madison replied, with a subtle sharpness in her voice I had never heard before. Besides, the resort offers superior lighting for photographs. Around this time, Madison began making remarks about my appearance that she would never have uttered previously. Have you considered toning down your hair color before the wedding? she inquired during an appointment at a bridal boutique. My hair had been a vibrant red for years, a shade Madison had complimented countless times in the past. The photographer believes it might be a distraction in the photos, she explained when she noticed my hurt expression. Perhaps something more natural? The bridesmaids should compliment the bride, not command attention. I acquiesced, telling myself it was her special day and such requests were customary. Yet, the critiques persisted about my overly casual manner of speaking, my unconventional fashion preferences, and even the simplicity of my apartment. Each observation was delivered with a smile, but felt like a series of tiny, stinging cuts. During a dinner with William's college friends, I overheard Madison introducing me to someone. "This is my sister, Olivia. She's an education consultant." I blinked in confusion. I was a third-grade teacher at a public elementary school, a profession I loved, and one Madison had always seemed to respect. Later, when I asked her about it, she chuckled nervously. Educational consultant just sounds more professional, doesn't it? Besides, you do consult with parents and other teachers. Our conversations became shorter and centered almost entirely on wedding specifics, not the enjoyable, creative aspects we had originally envisioned sharing, but rather logistical tasks Madison needed help with. She canceled our long-standing birthday dinner tradition, a ritual spanning 16 years, because the Bradleys had scheduled a crucial meeting with potential investors at their country club, which happened to coincide with the same evening. What pained me most was witnessing Madison's transformation. She began adopting Catherine Bradley's precise manner of speaking, her habit of touching her pearls when emphasizing the point, even her dismissive hand gesture when declining something. Madison started referencing books I knew she hadn't read, and expressing opinions on wines she had previously shown no interest in. It felt as though I was watching my sister audition for a role in a play about affluent people, desperately hoping to be permanently cast. Months before the wedding, Madison requested we meet at an expensive cafe I could barely afford. She arrived 15 minutes late, already glancing at her watch as if she had a more significant engagement elsewhere. "I need to talk to you about the wedding party," she began, stirring her $7 tea without making eye contact. "William and I have been discussing the balance of the bridal party, and we think, well, it would make more sense for Jennifer to be my maid of honor." Jennifer was William's sister, a woman Madison had met only 3 times and had previously described as cold as her tennis bracelet. "It's about family balance," Madison continued into my silence. "The Bradleys are very traditional, and since we're having William's brother as best man, it makes sense to have his sister as maid of honor. You understand, right?" I didn't understand at all, but I nodded automatically. "Sure, of course. You'll still be a bridesmaid, and I'll still need your help with everything," she added quickly, finally looking up. "Nothing really changes, except the title." Everything had already changed, but I couldn't articulate the words. 2 weeks later, I received an invitation to dinner at the Bradley Mansion, a 6-bedroom estate boasting a separate guest house larger than my entire apartment building. The blatant display of wealth was overwhelming. Original artwork adorning every wall, furniture that appeared too fragile to use, staff members who materialized and vanished silently to replenish drinks and clear plates. During dinner, Edward Bradley questioned me about my family background with the clinical interest of someone examining a specimen. "And your father was in construction, was it?" he inquired, even though Madison had undoubtedly told them our father owned a small local plumbing business. "Yes, he built his company from nothing," I stated proudly. "He began with just himself and now employs 15 people." Madison quickly interjected. "Dad always possessed such a sharp business mind. He consulted on several significant commercial projects." I tried to catch Madison's eye, but she was absorbed in arranging her napkin meticulously on her lap. When I mentioned our childhood tradition of camping in the backyard during summer thunderstorms, Madison laughed excessively and changed the subject. Later, as I was returning from the restroom, I overheard Catherine Bradley in the hallway speaking to what sounded like another dinner guest. Madison is delightful, but her family isn't quite, well, you understand. The sister, particularly, is just not our sort. William says we must be patient during the adjustment period. What shocked me more than Catherine's words was hearing Madison's hushed agreement. Olivia means well. She's just not accustomed to this milieu. I slipped back to the dining room before they could see me, my cheeks burning with shame. Still, I rationalized Madison's behavior. The pressure of organizing a wedding while navigating new family dynamics was surely taking a toll. This wasn't genuinely my sister. It was a transient phase that would pass after the wedding. I continued writing checks to wedding vendors. $12,000 for the photographer Madison replaced at the last minute because the original one had photographed too many average venues. $8,000 for the string quartet that needed to be flown in from New York because local musicians were not considered refined enough. Each time I transferred funds, I told myself it was an investment in our relationship's future. Once the wedding concluded, my true sister would reappear. 5 months before the wedding, our once daily texts had dwindled to Madison occasionally messaging me with requests. Can you contact the florist regarding the deposit? Or need the check for the cake by Thursday? Phone calls became infrequent, and when they did occur, Madison was distracted, often clearly multitasking. The breaking point of this period arrived when I discovered via Instagram that Madison had hosted an engagement party at the Bradleys' country club. The meticulously curated photos depicted my sister laughing with William's friends, cutting a bespoke cake, and raising champagne flutes under twinkling lights, all without any indication that her only sister had not been invited. When I called her, my voice trembling, Madison sounded genuinely perplexed by my distress. It was merely a small gathering that Catherine arranged at the last moment, she explained. Mostly William's business contacts and family friends. You wouldn't have recognized anyone. I would have known you, I replied softly. Don't be so sensitive, Liv. There will be numerous events you'll attend. Her voice had adopted the slightly condescending tone Catherine often used. I must rush off for a menu tasting. Talk soon. The pattern of exclusion persisted when Madison's bridal shower date was altered without anyone informing me. I arrived at the original venue with my carefully wrapped gift to find an empty private dining room. The hostess regarded me with sympathy. But that party called yesterday to reschedule for next weekend due to a conflict. I later learned through a mutual acquaintance that the conflict was Catherine, Bradley's last-minute opportunity to secure a celebrity wedding planner for a consultation on the same day, but only if they moved the shower. No one had bothered to update me. Even more painful was discovering that Madison had uninvited several of our childhood friends from the wedding, girls who had been part of our lives since elementary school. When Jessica, my oldest friend, called to ask what she had done wrong, I was completely blindsided. Madison sent an email stating that due to venue capacity issues, they had to make some difficult cuts, Jessica explained. But then I saw on Facebook that they've added all these people from William's firm. I just thought, did I offend her somehow? I promised to investigate, but Madison's explanation was as hollow as I had feared. We had to make space for some of William's father's business associates. It's complicated, Olivia. These connections are vital for William's career. More unsettling was the evidence that Madison was systematically reconstructing her past. The wedding website launched with a Our Story section that described Madison as having attended exclusive private schools. She went to public school with me, and growing up taking annual family trips to Europe. We had gone to the Wisconsin Dells for vacation and considered that the pinnacle of luxury. When I confronted her, Madison became defensive. It's merely a slight embellishment. No one verifies these things. But it isn't true, I insisted. And what about Mom and Dad? They know we never traveled to Europe. Madison's response chilled me. I've already discussed it with them. They appreciate the importance of presenting the correct image to the Bradleys. Later, my mother reluctantly confirmed that Madison had asked our parents to minimize their actual careers if questioned directly. Dad was instructed to avoid mentioning his plumbing business and focus instead on the property development aspect. of his work. Mom was told not to bring up her 20 years as a school secretary, but rather describe herself as having managed educational administration. While being systematically erased from Madison's narrative, I was still expected to fund significant portions of her increasingly lavish wedding. In early spring, I wrote a $10,000 check for flowers, while explicitly being told I could not participate in the consultation because Catherine has very specific ideas about the aesthetic. That night at home, I reviewed my bank statements and was stunned to realize I'd already spent $42,000 of my promised $50,000, money I had been accumulating for years with vague aspirations of eventually purchasing a small house. Meanwhile, Madison complained about budget constraints while adding a champagne fountain, an ice sculpture, and custom monogram napkins. I made several attempts to reconnect with my sister on an emotional level. I invited her to our parents' home for dinner, hoping the familiar environment might bring back the Madison I knew. She arrived an hour late, constantly checked her phone, and departed early for an important call with the venue coordinator. When I suggested meeting for coffee at our cherished old cafe, she agreed but spent most of the time dismissing my concerns. "You're overthinking everything," she said when I tried to discuss the growing distance between us. "It's just a wedding." Stress. Everything will revert to normal after the ceremony. But her definition of normal seemed increasingly ambiguous. When she inadvertently referred to her bridesmaids as her second-tier friends compared to her new social circle, I began to understand that Madison wasn't merely adapting to impress the Bradleys. She was fundamentally altering her values. The ultimate catalyst before the devastating email came when I discovered through a Facebook post that Madison had gone on a European bachelorette trip with Jennifer and several of William's female relatives. The photos showed them in Paris and the French Riviera, sipping champagne on yachts and posing in front of landmarks I knew Madison had always dreamed of visiting. When I called, hurt beyond measure, Madison claimed it had been entirely last minute. Although the matching custom outfits and professional photography suggested months of planning. "Why wasn't I invited?" I asked directly. "I'm your sister. Your only sister." There was a prolonged silence before Madison responded. "We considered inviting you, but Jennifer thought you might feel out of place with the group. They're very, it's a different world." And you concurred with her assessment of me? The pain in my chest was palpable. "It's not like that, Liv, it's just ... Some of these women have certain expectations. Their last group trip was to Dubai. You don't really fit with that lifestyle. Because I'm a teacher? Because I can't afford 5-star hotels. Don't be so dramatic. It's not about money." But we both knew it was precisely about money and the status it supposedly conferred. I ended the call without saying goodbye. A first in our relationship. That night, I wept myself to sleep, mourning not just my exclusion from the trip, but the loss of the sister I believed I knew. Little did I realize the most profound betrayal was yet to come. The day the email arrived began. Like any ordinary Tuesday, I was in my classroom preparing an art project for my 3rd graders. We were creating family trees with finger-painted leaves representing different relatives. As my students worked, I circulated around the room, helping them add branches and names. 8-year-old Zoe was meticulously painting a leaf for her sister. "She's annoying sometimes, but I still love her," she explained. "Seriously, that's what sisters do, right, Miss Lawrence?" "They love each other even when they're annoying." "That is exactly right," I agreed, ignoring the sharp pang in my chest as I thought of Madison Dot during my lunch break. I checked my email while eating a sandwich at my desk. Among the usual communications from parents and school announcements, one subject line immediately captured my attention. "Wedding update, live stream info." The message had been sent at 11:42 p.m. the previous night. I opened it, anticipating details about the videographer's plans, or perhaps a timeline for the wedding day. Instead, I read words that turned my sandwich to ash in my mouth. "Hi, Liv! Hope you're doing well. Quick update on wedding logistics. With our final headcount adjustments and some last-minute additions from the Bradley side, we're at capacity for the venue. So, rather than having you attend in person, we've arranged for a premium live stream of the ceremony and reception. You'll still feel part of things, but this way we can accommodate some of the more important connections William's parents need to include. The videographer says the quality will be amazing. You'll barely notice you're not there in person, lol. I'll send the link closer to the date. P.S. Speaking of the videographer, any chance you could send the next installment of your contribution early? We're upgrading to the premium package to ensure the live stream quality is top-notch. My hands began to tremble so violently I had to set my phone down. The room seemed to tilt sideways as I read and reread the message, certain I must be misinterpreting. My sister was disinviting me from her wedding. The wedding I had contributed $42,000 toward, and asking me to watch it online. Not only that, but she wanted more money for the privilege of my virtual attendance. The casual lull felt like a physical blow. The reference to more important connections burned like acid. But what truly shattered something fundamental inside me was the complete absence of acknowledgement for what this would mean to me emotionally, let alone financially. Rachel, the kindergarten teacher whose classroom was next to mine, found me. Still staring at my phone 15 minutes later. Olivia, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I couldn't even articulate words to explain. I simply handed her my phone. As she read the email, her expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to outright indignation. This cannot be real, she said finally. Your sister cannot possibly expect you to be all right with this. But she did expect exactly that. The Madison I had known would never have treated me in this manner. But that Madison seemed to have vanished, replaced by someone who prioritized social advancement over one of the most fundamental relationships in her life. I think I need to go home, I whispered. Rachel immediately volunteered to cover my afternoon classes. Go take care of yourself. This is ... This is beyond comprehension. The drive home was a blur. I nearly missed my exit twice. My mind replayed years of sisterhood, teaching Madison to braid her hair, holding her hand at our grandmother's funeral, celebrating when she landed her first real job after college. How have we gone from those moments to this cold, dismissive email? At home, I sank onto my couch and read the email once more, searching for any indication that this was a misunderstanding or a cruel jest. There was none. I scrolled through our recent text exchanges, seeking any warning signs I might have overlooked. There were plenty: increasing distance, dismissive replies, requests for money without gratitude. I had simply refused to acknowledge the pattern. I called our mother, my voice breaking as soon as she answered. Mom, did you know about this? About Madison disinviting me from the wedding? The prolonged silence before she responded revealed everything. She mentioned something about space constraints. Mom said carefully, your father and I assumed she was talking about distant relatives, not you. Oh, honey ... She wants me to watch it online, Mom. Like, it's a concert I couldn't get tickets for. Not my only sister's wedding that I've paid for half of. What are you going to do? Mom asked quietly. I looked down at my bank statement, open on my laptop. At the recent check for $10,000 for the videographer that had not yet cleared. Suddenly, with absolute clarity, I knew precisely what I needed to do. I'm going to respect her decision, I said, my voice steadier than I anticipated. Just not in the way she believes. That evening, I took out photo albums filled with pictures of Madison and me throughout the years. There we were, building a snowman in matching purple snowsuits, making silly faces at our cousin's wedding, hugging on the day she graduated college. The images blurred as tears welled in my eyes. I cried for hours, deep, body-shaking sobs that left me utterly drained. But when the tears finally ceased, something else had emerged: resolve. Madison had made her choice, prioritizing appearances over genuine connection, embracing people who valued status over substance. She had decided my money was acceptable, but my presence was not. It was time for me to make some choices of my own. I barely slept that night. Instead, I replayed every interaction with Madison over the past year, seeing clearly for the first time how systematically she'd been pulling away while still soliciting my financial support. Around 3 in, the morning, I remembered something our grandmother had told me when I was struggling with middle school friendship drama. People who want you to diminish yourself to make them comfortable don't deserve the full radiance of who you are. By morning, my hurt had solidified into a cold, clear anger. I made coffee and sat down at my kitchen table with a journal, methodically, documenting everything I was feeling and contemplating. The act of putting it into writing helped crystallize my thoughts. This wasn't merely about being excluded from a wedding. It was about recognizing that my sister had fundamentally changed, or perhaps finally revealed who she truly was. After finishing my 3rd cup of coffee, I opened my laptop and began researching wedding contract legalities and financial obligations. Most vendors had cancellation policies, but since the contracts were in Madison's name, I needed to understand my rights as the person who had provided the deposits. I created a spreadsheet tracking every payment I had made, taking screenshots of the transfer confirmations from my bank account. At 9 o'clock, I called my parents and asked if I could visit. They were waiting for me in the kitchen, concern etched on their faces. Wordlessly, I handed them a printed copy of Madison's email. My father read it first, his face darkening with each line. He passed it to my mother, whose hand flew to her mouth in shock. "This cannot be correct," she whispered. "Madison wouldn't do this, but she did," I said quietly. "And based on your reaction, she didn't even inform you." Dad paced the kitchen, his anger palpable. $42,000, Olivia. That's what you've invested in this wedding. For her to treat you like this is unconscionable. "It's not solely about the money," Mom added, though we all knew that was part of it. "It's what this indicates about how she values your relationship." Their reaction validated my own feelings, but what they shared next astonished me. Apparently, Madison had also been systematically diminishing our parents' role in the wedding. They had been told they would not be seated at the main table during the reception, but rather with extended family. Madison had also requested they tell people they were distant relatives if any of the Bradley guests inquired. "We believe she was just anxious about impressing these people," Mom said, wiping away tears. "We told ourselves it was temporary." "Stress. We've been justifying our behavior for months," Dad admitted. "Perhaps we've all been enabling this by remaining silent." Their support reinforced my resolve. By noon, I had a comprehensive strategy. First, I called the venue and explained that I was withdrawing my financial contribution to the wedding. The manager was surprisingly understanding. "We've witnessed situations like this previously," she commented sympathetically. "Family weddings can bring out complex dynamics." Next, I contacted the wedding planner Madison had hired. I forwarded her the email along with documentation of my payments. "I am not attempting to cancel my sister's wedding," I clarified. "I am simply removing my financial responsibility from the equation." The planner, Vanessa, sighed deeply. "Unfortunately, this is not as rare as you might believe. I will update the contracts to remove you as a financial guarantor." The caterer, the photographer, the florist. I methodically worked through the list of vendors I had paid, explaining the situation without unnecessary drama or excessive detail. Most were professional and cooperative, though a few expressed concern about receiving the remainder of their payments. "That is between you and the bride now," I stated firmly. My final stop was the bank, where I placed a stop payment on the $10,000 check for the videographer that had not yet cleared. The bank officer raised an eyebrow at the amount, but processed my request without comment. Back home, I created a detailed record of everything. All $42,000 already spent. Screenshots of Madison's email, notes from my conversations with vendors. The remaining $8,000 I had promised but not yet spent was transferred into a personal investment account, my initial step toward rebuilding my savings. With each completed action, I felt a complex mixture of grief and empowerment. The sister I thought I knew was gone, but I was reclaiming my self-respect in the process of letting her go. Finally, It was time to reply to Madison's email. I drafted several versions, pouring out my hurt and disappointment in lengthy paragraphs that I ultimately deleted. I called my friend Rachel for guidance. How do I convey to her what this has done to me without sounding spiteful? I asked. Sometimes the most effective response is the simplest, Rachel advised. You don't owe her an explanation. She wouldn't comprehend it anyway. Taking her counsel to heart, I composed a 3-sentence reply. I have received your email regarding the wedding livestream. I have informed all vendors whom I previously paid that I am withdrawing my financial support effective immediately. I wish you and William happiness in your new life. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before I finally pressed it. Then I blocked Madison's number, not permanently, but to give myself space from the inevitable fallout. As the confirmation of the sent email appeared on my screen, I felt something unexpected. Relief. For months, I had been contorting myself to conform to Madison's new vision of her life, suppressing my hurt at each slight and rejection. Finally, I'd stopped participating in my own diminishment. My phone began ringing at precisely 6:32 the next morning. Even with Madison's number blocked, the calls came through my parents' phones, my work line, and finally from William's number. I let them all go to voicemail, needing time to brace myself for the confrontation I knew was imminent. Madison's voicemails escalated from angry. How dare you do this right before my wedding? To panicked, the venue is threatening to cancel without full payment. To tearfully manipulative, I cannot believe you'd ruin the most important day of my life over a misunderstanding. William's messages were coldly menacing. You have exercised a serious lapse in judgment, he stated in his clipped, businesslike tone. There could be legal ramifications for interfering with vendor contracts. My mother called around 9, her voice strained. Madison appeared at our house at dawn, hysterical. She's still here. She claims you've canceled all the wedding payments. And the vendors are threatening to withdraw. Not canceled, I gently corrected. I've simply removed my financial responsibility. The contracts remain valid. She and William simply need to fulfill them now. She says they cannot afford to replace your contribution on such short notice. William's family owns multiple vacation homes and belongs to 3 country clubs. I pointed out, I believe they will manage. Mom was quiet for a moment. Your father and I stand by your decision, Olivia. We find ourselves caught in the middle here. I understand. You do not have to defend me to her. The situation expanded beyond just Madison and me. As the day progressed, William called again, this time with a different approach. Look, I understand my family can be daunting. They have certain expectations that might appear excessive to outsiders, but this wedding is crucial for my position within the family business. Outsiders, I repeated the word, bitter on my tongue. That is what I am now, an outsider to my own sister's life. William sighed. That isn't what I intended. The truth is, my parents made their financial support contingent on maintaining certain appearances. They desire this wedding to reflect a specific image, and that image does not include a 3rd-grade teacher sister. It's complex, he faltered. Actually, it is quite simple, I stated. Madison chose your family's money and approval over her relationship with me. That is her prerogative, but it is my prerogative to cease funding my own exclusion. Throughout the day, I received calls from various wedding vendors confirming my withdrawal of financial support. Several mentioned that Madison had contacted them in a panic, attempting to dispute my right to remove my funds. As I provided clear documentation of my payments, their hands were tied. By late afternoon, I felt emotionally drained but resolute. I'd reclaimed control over the one thing I could, my own participation in this painful charade. What I did not anticipate was Madison appearing at my apartment unannounced at 7 that evening. When I opened the door, I scarcely recognized my sister. Her meticulously maintained appearance had collapsed, her hair in a messy ponytail, her eyes red and swollen, wearing sweatpants I hadn't seen since her college days. For a brief instant, I caught a glimpse of the Madison I had grown up with, before the Bradleys and their world had reshaped her. How could you do this to me? She demanded, pushing past me into the apartment 2 weeks before my wedding. Do you comprehend what a catastrophe this is? I closed the door quietly. You just invited me from your wedding via email, Madison, after I contributed $42,000 to it. How did you anticipate I would react? It wasn't deliberate. It was a space issue. Her voice was shrill, desperate. Then why wasn't William's third cousin from Phoenix disinvited? Or his father's golf partner? Why was your only sister the person who was cut? Madison paced my small living room. You don't grasp the immense pressure I'm under. The Bradleys have expectations. This wedding isn't merely a ceremony. It's William's future in the family business. And what about our future as sisters? I asked softly. Did that factor into your decision at all? She stopped pacing, her expression shifting from anger to something more calculated. Look, I made an error. Okay, of course, you should attend the wedding. I'll call you first thing tomorrow with your official invitation. We can pretend this never occurred. But you still require my money. Her silence provided the answer. That email wasn't a mistake, Madison. It was a culmination. For months, you've been pushing me aside while still reaching for my savings. You've been ashamed of me, of our parents, of our background. You've reinvented yourself to impress people who would never truly accept you if they knew the genuine you. You don't understand, she repeated, but with less conviction. Then help me understand, I urged. Explain to me how the sister who held my hand at Grandma's funeral became someone capable of treating me this way. Madison sank onto my couch, suddenly deflated. The Bradleys threatened to cut William off if the wedding wasn't perfect. They've been searching for reasons to object to me from the start. I'm not from their world. So you attempt to erase where you actually came from? It was Catherine's suggestion to have you watch remotely, Madison admitted quietly. She claimed it would be more appropriate given the high-profile guests attending. She convinced William, and he convinced me it was for the best. And you genuinely believe that excluding your sister was for the best. The pain in my chest was almost unbearable. You don't understand what it's like striving to belong. In their world, everything I do is scrutinized. Everything I say is judged. If this wedding isn't flawless, William's parents will never genuinely accept me. If they cannot accept you with your real family by your side, they will never truly accept you anyway, I said gently. You are constructing your relationship on a foundation of falsehoods. Madison's phone rang, interrupting our conversation. William's name appeared on the screen. Madison immediately straightened her posture and wiped her tears before answering. With a bright, artificial voice. Hi, honey. Yes, I'm just attending to some details. Everything's perfectly fine. Witnessing her instantaneous transformation from my vulnerable sister to William's flawlessly composed fiancé clarified everything. Madison wasn't just deceiving the Bradleys. She was deceiving William, our family, and perhaps most tragically herself. When she ended the call, I spoke with calm certainty. I am not reinstating the funds, Madison. Not because I wish to punish you, but because I believe you need to make a choice about what truly matters. If William and his family only desire you under certain conditions, that isn't love. It's a transaction. So you are abandoning me? She accused, her eyes flashing. No, I am refusing to enable you. There is a distinction. I took a deep breath. I love you, and I will support you emotionally through whatever transpires next. But I will not financially support a wedding I am not welcome to attend. Madison departed without resolving anything. Her parting words were a blend of guilt-tripping and vague threats about permanent damage to our family relationships. As I closed the door behind her, I felt a complex mix of sadness for what we had lost and pride in finally asserting myself. For the first time since this ordeal commenced, I slept soundly that night. The wedding did proceed, albeit in a dramatically altered form. Without my financial contribution, and with the Bradleys apparently unwilling to bridge the gap. Madison and William opted for a significantly reduced ceremony at a local hotel. I learned this not directly from Madison, but from our parents who attended with mixed feelings. It was pleasant but strained, Mom reported. The Bradleys barely spoke to anyone from our side of the family. Madison appeared to be trying so hard to appease everyone that she hardly seemed to enjoy her own wedding. I deliberately avoided checking social media for wedding photographs or updates. The distance I created was necessary for my own healing. And seeing Madison celebrating without me would only reopen wounds that were just beginning to close in the months that followed. I focused on rebuilding my life and my savings. The money I had managed to retain became the foundation of a therapy fund, an investment in my well-being I should have made long before the wedding drama unfolded. My therapist, Dr. Chin, helped me process the complex grief of losing the relationship I believed I had with my sister. "You are mourning an idea as much as a person," she explained during one session. "The sister you thought you had, the relationship you believed in, that is a significant loss." I also began practicing yoga and meditation, finding that the physical discipline helped quiet my mind when thoughts of Madison threatened to overwhelm me. A weekend retreat in the mountains offered perspective and distance, allowing me to see that while Madison had made choices that hurt me profoundly, those choices reflected her own insecurities more than they did my worth. I started journaling daily, tracking my emotional progress and setbacks. Some days, I could contemplate Madison with compassion. Other days, the anger and hurt felt as raw as when I first read her email. But gradually, the sharp edges of the pain began to soften. 3 months after the wedding, I received a text from Madison. "Can we talk?" We met at a neutral coffee shop, both of us visibly nervous. The Madison who arrived was different from both the sister I had grown up with and the social climbing woman she had become during her engagement. Her hair had returned to its natural color. Her clothes were stylish but not ostentatious. Most noticeably, she seemed tired in a way that transcended physical exhaustion. "How are you?" I inquired carefully. "Struggling," she admitted with unexpected candor. "It turns out pretending to be someone you're not is exhausting, especially when it doesn't even work." She explained that despite all her efforts to integrate with the Bradleys, they still found ways to remind her she wasn't truly one of them. The final humiliation had occurred when Catherine had discovered through a mutual acquaintance that our father owned a plumbing business, not the property development company Madison had invented. She orchestrated this big show of asking Dad about a plumbing issue at their house, right in front of everyone at the dinner party. She knew exactly what she was doing. Madison stared into her coffee. I felt such shame, not of Dad, but of myself for being embarrassed by him in the first place. "Have you spoken to Dad about it?" I asked. Madison shook her head. "I don't know how to face him, or you, or anyone I've wounded by trying so desperately to be good enough for people who were never going to accept me anyway." While a part of me instinctively wanted to offer immediate forgiveness and comfort, I recognized that doing so would mean reverting to old, unhealthy patterns. "I appreciate your honesty," I said instead. "But rebuilding trust requires time. I need assurance that this isn't just another version of you adapting to circumstances." We established new boundaries that day. I made it clear I needed a genuine apology, not regret born of convenience. I emphasized the need for consistent, truthful communication moving forward, and I explicitly stated that our relationship could no longer involve financial entanglement of any kind. Madison agreed to everything, although I could see the new boundaries made her uncomfortable. "I don't know who I am anymore," she confessed as we prepared to leave. "I spent so long trying to be what other people desired that I lost myself somewhere along the path. Perhaps that is your starting point," I suggested. "Finding yourself again." 6 months after the wedding, our family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner. The atmosphere was hesitant but warm. Madison and William arrived separately. She came early to assist with the cooking, while he joined only for dinner. His discomfort in our modest family home noticeable but unspoken. By the 1-year anniversary of the wedding, Madison and William had separated. She called me the day she moved out of their opulent apartment and into a small place of her own. He kept asserting I had changed, that I wasn't the woman he had. Married, she explained. The irony is that I am finally becoming myself again. Madison began therapy, secured a new job that did not rely on the Bradley's connections, and slowly, painstakingly, rebuilt relationships with family and old friends she had alienated. During one particularly frank conversation, she acknowledged how pursuing external approval had cost her the connections that genuinely mattered. I believed belonging in their world would bring me happiness, she said. But I was more genuinely myself in our backyard camping fort than I ever was within their mansion walls. As for me, the experience transformed my understanding of self-worth and the importance of boundaries. I learned that loving someone does not necessitate accepting mistreatment, and that sometimes the kindest action you can take for both yourself and others is to stop enabling harmful patterns. The money I had salvaged after withdrawing from the wedding eventually became the down payment on a small condo. Not as grand as the Bradley estate, but undeniably mine in a way they're borrowed. Prestige can never be. My relationship with Madison continues to evolve. We are not the inseparable sisters we once were, and perhaps we never will be again. But we are constructing something new, founded on honesty rather than expectation or obligation. There is a different kind of intimacy in knowing someone has witnessed your worst self and chosen to remain anyway. What I have learned through this painful journey is that authentic relationships invariably outlast superficial ones. The liberation that comes from being true to yourself, even when it entails a cost, is worth more than any amount of social status or approval. So I pose the question to you: have you ever faced the choice between upholding appearances and being authentic? What boundaries have you needed to establish with loved ones to safeguard your self-worth? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this narrative resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might benefit from hearing that standing up for yourself is not selfish. It is essential. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to be truthfully, unapologetically you.